My name is Hannah Ringler, and I am in the MAT Secondary English Language Arts program at NC State. This webinar focuses on the book Grammar Alive by Brock Haussamen, with contributions by Amy Benjamin, Martha Coln, Rebecca Wheeler, and various members of NCTE's Assembly for the Teaching of English Grammar. Grammar Alive seeks to provide a resource for kindergarten through 12th grade teachers who wonder how to teach, apply, and learn a subject they themselves were never taught or never properly learned. It negotiates the embattled ground between standardized testing, confident writing, and the culturally inclusive classroom, providing a hands-on approach to grammar with practical examples and helpful vignettes that illustrate real teachers' real classroom experiences with teaching grammar. In addition, the book also contains a comprehensive grammar glossary and annotated list of sources for teachers to use as quick references and tools for expanding their grammar knowledge. While the final third of the book provides a breakdown of grammar, including a thorough explanation of linguistic grammar and sentence diagramming, the bulk of the book develops the 3 goals for teaching grammar outlined in the first chapter. The first goal is that every student, from every background, will complete school with the ability to communicate comfortably and effectively in both spoken and written standard English, with awareness of when standard English is appropriate. The second goal is that every student will complete school with the ability to analyze the grammatical structure of sentences within English texts, using grammatical terminology correctly and demonstrating knowledge of how sentence-level grammatical structure contributes to the coherence of paragraphs and texts. And the third goal is that every student will complete school with an understanding of and appreciation for the natural variation that occurs in language across time, social situation, and social group. While recognizing the need for mastering standard English, students will also demonstrate an understanding of the equality in the expressive capacity and linguistic structure among a range of language varieties, both vernacular and standard, as well as an understanding of language-based prejudice. While these goals may seem out of reach, and the authors do acknowledge that they are ambitious and idealistic, they are intended to provide direction for teachers and a context for grammar instruction in order to embed descriptivist grammar instruction in everyday curricula. Additionally, they are to remind teachers that while it is important to give students the tools to produce and perform standard written and spoken English effectively, it is equally essential to teach students that their own ways of speaking and the dialects of their peers and others that they may meet throughout their lives are just as valid as standard written and spoken English and follow equally strict rules. Each of the 4 chapters that follows explores one or more of these goals in some detail, and each chapter makes up one of the 4 primary points of the book. In Chapter 2, Discovering Grammar, students are to discover grammar by helping them discover that all language has grammar. By comparing and contrasting different dialects, including African American Vernacular English and Shakespearean English, students learn to identify the basic building blocks of grammar and how these patterns converge and diverge. This develops a deeper understanding of each variety of English students may be familiar with, and encourages students to choose how they use language and grammar deliberately and with thought to effect or function. Many of the sample exercises in Chapter 2 encourage students to bring in examples of their own home language. Chapter 3, Teaching the Language of Grammar, formalizes some of the knowledge students have been constructing in Chapter 2. It suggests that much of the time, the grammar concepts students struggle with most are those that are taught completely in the abstract, and it provides concrete exercises for illustrating what exactly the grammar does. One way the text suggests explaining grammar to students is via the concept of form, frame, and function. Form being what endings words take that make them nouns, verbs, adjectives, and etc. Frame being what words suggest that the word that follows will be a noun, verb, adjective, etc. And function being what words can function as other types of words when the context or the ending changes. For example, when rich becomes a noun when it is preceded by the, and when rich becomes an adverb when ly is added to the end to make it richly. Chapter 4, Flexing the Student Sentence Sense, focuses on expanding students' capacity to write varied types of sentences and to choose what type of sentence is most effective in context via sentence imitation and patterning. It encourages students to identify traditionally flawed grammar, such as run-on sentences and sentence fragments, but also to experiment deliberately with using these in their own writing. Chapter 4 also suggests using code switching as a means for building up students' writing skills. By writing and rewriting a piece directed at different audiences each time, a student gains a better understanding of how they use language for effect in different contexts, and what effect these language choices might have in unusual contexts. An additional resource for this chapter is Kilgallen's text, Sentence Composing for Middle School, which has a plethora of exercises on sentence imitation, expansion, and composing. Chapter 5, Non-Native Speakers in the English Classroom, discusses how best to help English language learners in an otherwise fluent English class at all levels of kindergarten through 12th grade, and explores some pattern problems that students from specific language backgrounds may have with English, such as false cognates, double negatives, lack of articles, excessive articles, lack of prepositions, word order, and comparatives and superlatives. It also brings up that having English language learners in an English class can be invaluable for teaching grammar, since students are likely to have studied English using specific grammatical terms to build schema. As anyone who has studied a foreign language for any length of time can attest, learning a second language teaches you more about the practical function of the building blocks of your own language than practically any amount of time in a language arts classroom can. While there are any number of useful exercises that one might draw from this book, two of my favorites, which I plan to bring into my classroom, are style guides and body diagramming. Style guides, in Chapter 2, on page 17, ask students to take a given text, such as a newspaper, and analyze its patterns of grammar and usage in areas such as the following: capitalization, paragraph length, organization of information, writing of numbers, sentence completeness, sentence length, sentence styles, punctuation choices, such as the Oxford comma, voice, the use of contractions and abbreviations, beginning sentences with conjunctions, and use of isms such as racism, sexism, and ableism. This is an excellent exercise that takes the immediacy and intimacy out of grammar. It's academically interesting, and a bit like a treasure map to complete, but it's not as personal as your own speech, your own writing. You can analyze and codify the choices others make, which will in turn make you aware of your own choices without ever having to confront them directly. Body diagramming, in Chapter 3, on page 30, has students with slips of paper with words on them that form a sentence arrange themselves to make that sentence, and the verbs and the nouns will interact with one another to illustrate their sentence, such as the subject usually hitting the verb with enough force to bump the verb into the direct object. A new set of students is given the words to make a passive version of the same sentence. They arrange themselves, with some mistakes, usually, and then they act out their sentence. This illustrates what exactly passive voice is, and how it affects the meaning and flow of the sentence. This exercise can also be used to illustrate other types of sentences and other types of grammar. What anyone reading this book should walk away with, however, is the idea that, in teaching grammar in school, we are not really teaching grammar at all. Children learn that automatically. Rather, we are teaching students about grammar, and we are hoping to bring them the added confidence and clarity that go with any knowledge that strengthens skills and deepens understanding. Through practicing grammar in real, meaningful contexts and giving students the words and tools to discuss language as experts, we can provide our students with the means to effectively manipulate the written and spoken word to their own advantage. This concludes the webinar on Grammar Alive by Brock Haussamen. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.